And greetings. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast alongside Todd Erzin and Aaron McIntyre. They're there at the studio. I'm in the Deace Man Cave here today because I've got to catch a flight to head out for some meetings in Phoenix shortly after the show today. So you've got me on remote. And fellas, we've got you on blast because Valentine's Day is coming up. And so is the deadline to make sure your Kexi cookies get delivered in time on February the 5th. Right now, get their outstanding limited Valentine's Day box. 6 chocolate-forward cookies. Black Forest chocolate truffle, chocolate caramel, Dubai chocolate, red hot velvet, and German chocolate. These are incredible. I've not tried one, but I've tried all the other ones, so that's how I know these are incredible. All right, just unwrap and enjoy. And again, these are here for a limited time, and then they're gone. All right, so get going now at Kexi.com, K-E-K-S-I, K-E-K-S-I. Grab a box while you can, and make sure you get the Valentine's Day gift that will be appreciated, and you get 15% off with my code DACE. 15% off with my code DACE at Kexi.com, K-E-K-S-I, Kexi.com. My code DACE will get you 15% off at Kexi.com. All right, coming up on today's show, Nick Freitas is going to join us at the bottom of the hour on what's happening in his home state of Virginia, why that could be a cautionary tale for the country here with the crucial midterm elections 10 months away, well, more like 9.5 months away. And also, next hour, we're going to have another guest for Fake News or Not, Jon Harris. We have featured his work a few times on the show, including an evergreen we did about a year ago on Red Pill Without Roots. And he's been doing some interesting writing on, are we watching a new coalition form in America, and just how real it is. What's the position of critical of Israeli policy, or I'm just using that as cover for the fact I'm an anti-Semite, right? What is that distinction? Because I'm totally willing to offer that distinction. I just want to make sure it's a distinction with a difference. It's not a scam. So we're going to try to separate fact from fiction with all the rising anti-Semitism that has been happening in certain pockets of the right. And we're going to do that with Jon coming up a little bit later on. And then Pop Culture Tuesday, one Grammy Award acceptance speech was unlike all of the others. And we will play that for you and react. That and more coming your way here today on the show after Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away brought to you by a standing filibuster. Apparently, there's a way that Senate Majority Leader John Thune can employ to pass the SAVE Act in the Senate. That's the bill that requires voter ID in elections. That makes it so they don't need 60 votes to pass the bill. As Rachel Bovard at The Federalist pointed out, it simply works by enforcing existing filibuster rules where senators have to speak as long as they can, instead of the invocation of a zombie filibuster, which basically nukes any legislation under threat of filibuster, because most senators are lazy. Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna, however, says she was assured by Senate leadership they will put up with a filibuster in the Senate.
Based on your discussion, it sounds like you're moving towards...
Yes, based on our discussion right now, we're moving towards it. Also, we got assurances on the standing filibuster, which is incredibly important. I don't know if you guys remember when I was talking about inherent contempt. A lot of people didn't know what that is. The standing filibuster is an old-school parliamentary procedure, but it's a way to break through what we consider traditional norms to get voter ID passed.
Okay, then let's see it. President Trump said on Truth Social yesterday he does not want to see the SAVE Act attached to the kerfuffle over the government funding bills currently being processed and wants the funding bill to remain clean. He said he wants to revisit the SAVE Act soon, however. Meanwhile, according to Signal Research, a majority of voters still support deportations. A Harvard-Harris poll released this week actually shows Trump has better numbers with his response to Minneapolis than he does on immigration in general. Speaking of Minneapolis, commie street orcs there have taken to setting up barricades, or walls, if you will, on certain streets and checking the papers of everyone passing through to make sure they're not ICE. That sounds familiar, but I just can't put my finger on it. A federal judge, a Biden appointee yesterday, ruled that the Trump administration cannot end the temporary protected status for over 350,000 Haitians currently living in the United States. Judge Anna Reyes said in her order, quote, "Temporary means permanent. Ha, go screw yourself. I'm queen of the universe," end quote. The TPS for those Haitians was set to expire today. Meanwhile, on the topic of
just chilling in Cedar Rapids.
That is St. Paul's United Methodist Church in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, hosting a massive anti-ICE training exercise where attendees are taught how to interfere with federal immigration law. Also, speaking of our home state of Iowa, the off-year Iowa caucuses were last night, and gubernatorial candidate Adam Steen whose name no one really knew in the state this time last year, absolutely dominated the straw poll conducted in various locales, towering over the rest of the field of some pretty good candidates, and also Congressman Randy Feenstra. That's a heck of an accomplishment. A little casual blasphemy for you on a Tuesday. Here's Texas U.S. Senate candidate James Talarico.
But I say all this in terms of, in context of abortion, because before God comes over Mary and we have the incarnation, God asks for Mary's consent, which is remarkable. I mean, go back and read this in Luke. I mean, the angel comes down and asks Mary if this is something she wants to do. And she says, if it is God's will, let it be done. Let it be. Let it happen. So to me, that is an affirmation in one of our most central stories that creation has to be done with consent. You cannot force someone to create. Creation is one of the most sacred acts that we engage in as human beings, but that has to be done with consent. It has to be done with freedom, and to me, that is absolutely consistent with the ministry and life and death of Jesus.
Again, that's Texas U.S. Senate candidate James Talarico, who's reportedly also in the process of pursuing a Master's of Divinity from Austin Presbyterian Theological Seminary. And finally, this.
Okay, Candace, let's do a take and just be mindful of the pronunciations. Let's not do anything weird.
I have so many explosive revelations to share with you.
Oh, wait. No, it's revelations. You know what? We can move on.
If you can't compartmentalize.
No, sweetheart, it's compartmentalized. Just take that one more time.
You have to be able to compartmentalize that.
Compartmentalize.
And we have to compartmentalize. Compartmentalize how you feel about somebody personally.
Are you doing this on purpose? Is this a bit? Are you trying to get clicks or something?
Can't compartmentalize, but really, it was about the architecture.
Oh, this is the big one. It's architecture.
You just like the architecture.
Architecture, not architecture.
Love the architecture.
Architecture.
Yeah, no, like he loved the architecture of things.
You really don't know how these words are pronounced? You speak for a living.
Prince Harry abdicates England, causes this whole race kerfluffle.
Oh, no, it's kerfuffle.
And that's what happened while we were away.
All right, you guys, there's about 15 places we could go with that montage. So in a minute, I'm going to come back to you two, and you tell us where you think we ought to devote our time, where you think it's the best prudent place with the time we have in the opening salvo here to address those interesting topics that Aaron highlighted for us. After we talk about our friends over at BIRCH Gold, BIRCH Gold wants you to know that gold has grown 700% in the last 20 years. And it's not a coincidence, as we've done more and more to debase our economy. That's more than any other commodity, by the way, on Earth. All right, gold thrives during these moments of uncertainty. Why? Because it's kind of funny when we do the spirit of the age thing and devalue and debase our economies and print money and spend money we don't have. When we play God with economics, it's the tangible things of God. We go back to, first things here, and we're like, we colored too far outside the lines. We've got to run for shelter, and that shelter is often the very tangible things like gold that God said we should be we should be having our economies rely on in the first place. And now after watching that Candace Owens thing, now I can't talk. All right. BIRCH Gold will help you convert an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in gold. Just text my name, Steve, to the number 989898. Receive your free info kit on gold when you do that. No obligation, just information. With an A-plus rating from the Better Business Bureau and tens of thousands of happy customers, let BIRCH Gold help you diversify with gold so you too can have peace of mind regardless of all of this uncertainty. Text Steve to 989898. Again, text my name, Steve, to 989898 today. All right, guys. Where do you think we ought to go here out of Aaron's montage?
Hey, Texas.
I was going to say this novel new thing called a standing filibuster, this really outmaneuvering that John Thune is about to embark on. It's just called, classical filibustering. We're actually going to call the Democrats' bluff. Maybe, probably not. I found that interesting, amusing.
Well, let's do both of those. Let's start on your end first, Aaron, and then we'll go to Mr. Talarico there in Texas. But on your end, with the standing filibuster, what's happening here is they're feeling the heat. And the arguments that we heard from the GOP establishment all of our lives as to why they couldn't do stuff that they promised us they were going to do is, well, it's too radical and it will lose us elections. And of course, much of that's been blown up. I mean, Donald Trump won Hispanic men by 10 points in 2024 by running on unconditional deportations, right? Using the most incendiary immigration language maybe even possible to speak into the ether. He got 1 out of every 5 black men voted for him, and he won Hispanic men by 10 points doing that. So the problem with the SAVE Act, and the reason why the SAVE Act produces way more consternation for hackneyed Republicans and swamp creatures than a lot of the other issues that we care deeply about that are policy related, is it gets to the heart of what their chief excuse has been all of our lives. All this policy does, okay? It doesn't, none of their donor class gets punished like it does if we produce a national E-Verify. There's going to be several big donors in the Republican Party punished by that. No core constituency that would claim to ever vote for us is going to lose out on some government subsidy or check if we shrink the size of government. There's no policy recoil here. There's no reverb here. It is a policy, quite literally, just to make it easier to win. It comes with no law of unintended consequence for the right at all. Doesn't come with any of it. And so this is a unique pressure point, guys, for the Republican establishment in that there's not a viable excuse for why they would not do what must be done to get this bill passed. It doesn't threaten any of their core constituencies, at least as far, now here's the thing, at least as far as we know. At least as far as we know. Right? As far as we know, provided they've been honest with us all this time and there's not really a uniparty and there's not really a unibrow and they don't really truly disagree with us fundamentally, and I'm wrong, the only party that hates us more than the Democrats are the Republicans. They don't hate their base. They've just truly been this feckless all these years, innocently. Provided that's all true, then there is 0.0 reasons you wouldn't do whatever you could to ensure your own political viability. Unless, of course, your definition of political viability is, say, different than ours. And so the bluff here has been called. And I think you're watching them scurry into how to react to that. Thoughts on that, gentlemen?
Well, speaking of as far as we know, Donald Trump has spoken out on numerous occasions about his desire for this to be taken care of. But he hasn't done it in a way that he's just made it a moment. He talks about a lot of really important things all at once, randomly. On a scale of 1 to 10, where is Donald Trump in your estimation on how much he's put his thumb on the scale on this?
I think there's been a little thumb scaling, not very much. He wants it as a clean bill and not associated with the spending bill so that it gets a straight up or down. It puts everybody on the record. So he's made his point clear on that. I don't think it's a coincidence, Todd, that him stating that coincides with the Senate leadership now determining, well, maybe we can do a standing filibuster after all. All right. So there has been some, but there's been way more done here by his base for sure. But he has done some.
Well, how much do you expect him to do more? And what do you think that would do?
I think they have to think he's willing to do more. I think that they have to think, and they, pronouns, the leadership, the Republican leadership in the Senate.
This is what I was worried
I think
about.
that they have to fear or suspect that Trump will do more to ultimately follow through.
So
doesn't mean he has to, but they have to fear that he will.
When Republicans play this psychological game of chicken that you just described, all too often, do we end up disappointed on this show? The answer is usually yes, right?
Yes.
See, that's why I'm asking about, like, man, if he wants this, he needs to turn the dial up to 11 on this one.
So a couple of hours ago when I was kind of reading up on this a little bit, for the filibuster, they have to remain speaking consecutively, each senator, and they only get a total of 2 speeches during a filibuster. So I forgot about this because it was taking a long time to process. So I asked Grok, hey, estimate based on age and other factors, an estimate of how long Democrats could filibuster based on, again, age and other factors. Again, it took so long, I forgot I even asked Grok this until a couple of moments ago. Here's the answer that it spit out. 66.6 days. Now, do we think Democrats will speak for 66.6 days straight? Do you think that they'll speak for 66.6 days straight, other than the symbolism? No. Do we think they'll speak for 33.3 days straight? No. Do you think they'll speak for 17 days straight? No. Do you think they'll speak for 8 days straight? Probably not. Do you think they'll speak for 4 days, 3 days? Now we're getting to territory where I could see that maybe happening because they don't have to have their entire caucus there at one time. So there's 3-4 days. Now, I know that's a huge task if they even got to 3 or 4 days, which would be a gargantuan task for their side as well. Now you go to the Republican side of the aisle. Do they have 51 senators in the Republicans in the Senate that would be ready and willing to stand on the wall and maintain quorum for 3-4 days straight? So go down your list of Republican senators. Let's just say it's time to turn up the heat even more because if you go start working your way through those lists of senators, I'm not super convinced that 51 of them would be willing to stand up for principle for that long of a time. All that it takes is just sitting there, but I'm not sure if we have 51 of them who are willing to sit there. And that's a tall task. I get that. Sitting for 3 days is not fun, but are we really serious about saving the republic? Because you could do that if you wanted to. Mm-hmm. It's an option.
I think that was fascinating, Aaron. And the beauty of this is the precedent that it sets, and you alluded to this in your montage. If they could do this, actually, no, you said this to me in my ear during your montage.
Yes.
If they could do that for this, then they can just do it comprehensively. But here's what I suggest. Don't make that argument yet. Don't make that argument yet. You have them cornered. All right. Take yes for an answer. Don't expand your argument while you're winning the current one until you've actually fulfilled that win. We are winning this argument right now on the SAVE Act, but we haven't won it yet. If and when we do, and they put the standing filibuster back in place, Democrats are not able to keep it going an indefinite period of time, as Aaron just alluded to. And ultimately, this legislation gets on President Trump's desk. That then, right after the ink is dry, that is the moment then to turn right around and say, well, then why can't we do that on A, B, C, and D, right? But don't do it yet. Don't give them any outs. You have them cornered. And you have to win that argument first. And when you have a winning argument in politics, just park your car right there. And just keep having that same argument over and over and over again. Don't be so eager to expand off of victory. Stay right in that space. You have the Republican, we have the Republican establishment cornered in a rare feat with an indefensible position. There's nothing to pivot to here. Nothing. There's no blowback. There's no constituency group. Like I said a few minutes ago, as far as we know, as far as we know, what we're shown, what we're told, they are without excuse to not do this. They don't have a defense for why wouldn't you do what it would take to win when you have the power to do what it takes. It's the whole thing with the Indiana legislature. So keep it parked right here. Make them follow through. And then once the ink is dry on the president's signature on that bill, if they do, that is the moment to then say, well, now that we set this precedent, why can't we do that on A, B, C, and D? Todd, were you going to say something there?
No. I'm fascinated by that analysis as well.
The situation in Texas is very commiserate with, I was on the stump with Adam Steen around the state of Iowa this past weekend. And one of the places we were, by the way, was in a prominent church in Cedar Rapids. In fact, which another church in Cedar Rapids got some ignominious, coverage there in Aaron's montage. And one of the things I said at every stop that we made at several churches across the state this weekend is you are seeing the emergence of something in the Democratic Party we have not seen before. And the first thing was to ignore Christianity and claim there was a secular space. The next stage was to then persecute you for your Christianity. And we're still in the throes of that, although a lot of it's been tampered down now that our guys are in charge. The third stage, though, you're starting to see we are entering into, and that is to co-opt our faith. And just completely and totally invert it like it's the Upside Down in Stranger Things. It's Bizarro World. And take your Bible from you and whip you with it. In a testimony to what Jesus means by the blaspheming of the Holy Spirit. Rob Sand is doing this throughout the state of Iowa. I've seen him do it on the stump. I've seen him do it in the media. I've seen him do it on social media. He's the likely Democratic nominee for governor here in Iowa. In fact, didn't I see you get into it with one of his people on, or at least one of his supporters on social media over this, Aaron, just this weekend?
Oh, yeah. That's a long story, but I'm sure. Yeah, he's one of my neighbors didn't know that I was his neighbor, and he was playing the screw around and find out game. Yeah,
like they think they're going to get away with this, and I can see why, given the current state of much of the church, they think this. And Talarico is just another step in of that phase that we're in now. But one of the things that we're going to have to be more prepared for than ever before is nominating candidates who can stand up to that. So that you do not, if you allow the faith to be hijacked and redefined, and we talked about this last year, guys, that campaigns now are every bit as much evangelistic crusades as they are merely, voting expeditions, just, canvassing for votes. And we're up against a rival religion here. And this is not any different than the whole thing every Christmas time that Joseph and Mary were refugees. No, they weren't. We debunk that and deconstruct that deconstruction every single Christmas. All right. The idea that it was already against the Jewish law to commit murder. It was even in the Levitical law that if you harm a woman who is pregnant, you're on the hook for the unborn child as well. The Hebrew midwives commit the heroic act of refusing to create or to commit late-term abortions against their own, children as deemed by Pharaoh, and that's one of the ways that Moses survives. So the idea that some 13 or 14-year-old Jewish girl was just going to say, you know what, on second thought, I'm just going to hit this back alley here in Judea and get rid of the thing, which is what he's alluding to. It's just flat out satanic. But there's going to be a lot more of this. And I have no idea whether, and we discussed this in the overtime yesterday, I have no idea what we're going to say and think and what Nicki Minaj is going to say or think 6 months from now. What I can tell you, though, is in the last, say, 6 days, she has spoken out more against the evils of this culture than your average Catholic priest or evangelical pastor has. And I go back to Charlie's memorial. One of my big takeaways from Charlie's memorial is the Holy Spirit basically said, "Yeah, we're just moving on. We're not waiting for your churches anymore. We're just, if they want to come along, that'd be great. But we've had enough tipping points. If they haven't gotten it by now, if they haven't hit spiritual puberty by now, then I guess not even the even the Nicki Minaj's will cry out." And I think you're seeing that. I think that the Lord's just moved beyond the church. And I don't think that what's going on with Nicki Minaj, and who knows how long it will last, hopefully it continues, but I can't guarantee that. Don't know. But I don't think this is the first time that we're going to be like, that's another country heard from. Where'd that come from? Because I think you are watching the Lord essentially bypass the church on an institutional level in America, because it's too weak to stand up to the likes of Rob Sand and James Talarico. And that's why it's going to, come from podcasters like us, or, salacious, rappers like Nicki Minaj, who suddenly get a burst of conscience and have a lot more than your sweater vested, skinny jeaned pastor. But time to get ready. Hillary Clinton now going after the people decrying toxic empathy are actually guilty of toxic empathy. I think she named our friend and colleague Ali Stuckey in her little expose about that over the weekend, for example. So now they're going to attempt to steal your faith from you. Or as Oron likes to say, hollow it out and wear it as a skin suit in public and then wield it against you in an election. Your thoughts on that, gentlemen?
This also means that all of us who know what time it is, and especially our political candidates, have to be ready and willing to be far more confrontational with the
Correct.
Talaricos and the Sands of the world.
Correct.
We've spent a generation leading with redemption, 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 and there always has to be room for repentance in our message. But the time for far more aggressive pushback, far more aggressive confrontation, far more aggressive, or even the existence of, get behind me, Satan, and let the chips fall where they may, that has to be present now. Because, and here's the dirty little secret as well. I learned this over the weekend too. These people who are trying to hollow out our religion and wear it as a skin suit, at the tiniest signal of pushback, they wilt like a cheap suit. They fold like a cheap suit. It's just a house of cards. You just have to be ready and willing to call that out for what it is. You have to be willing to confront, especially our political candidates.
Well, and it's that readiness and willingness that is so rare, which is why Hillary, as I mentioned last week in a different context, specifically about her, why wouldn't she try this based on what she sees at church in Red State, Cedar Rapids, Iowa? Why wouldn't she try this based on, yes, Aaron stood up to them, but that was, that's sports, bro. That wasn't just like a weird one-off. That was typical sports bro who actually transed his kid, and he's sitting there fighting and F-bombing in the name of Jesus. That's all over the place, and you see similar anons coming his defense. Why wouldn't she try it? Because of what Aaron just said. It's not common. It's not hard, and they do wilt immediately, but we won't even do that. So we have lots of questions to ask ourselves yet again about ultimately what our priorities are and what our idols are, and when the rubber meets the road, which one do we choose?
Well, I think we have to define who we is. I certainly don't think our churches are going to do it en masse. I do think a lot of the people listening to a show like this would. Otherwise, we probably would have driven them off by now. And I think what you guys need to be told is you guys are the stand-in. All right? Holy Spirit just grabbed the phone, called you in from the bullpen. So get warmed up. Get warmed up. You're going in. Because the previous pitchers ain't cutting it. Not even trying to, in fact. They're just hanging curveballs. So you guys are getting called in. Aaron is correct. All right? Come in. Be prepared to throw smoke. Might have to throw some chin music. Might have to look at some folks and say, you are a son of the devil. So get ready. The calls come in. You're in the bullpen. We all are. Warming up.
Amen.
The Steve Deace Show.
All right, back here on the Steve Deace Show, powered by our friends over at Masa Chips. I just tried the white corn tortilla chips. Of the tortilla chips, those were the best ones yet, I thought. Turn over the bag, you look at it, 4 ingredients, all words you can easily pronounce and know. Even Candace Owens can pronounce these words. That's how well-known they are. All right, now I would argue their cousin, or maybe it's their twin brother, the Vandy chips, even better. Potato chips made in that beef tallow are phenomenal. Anyway, the great thing about these two is because you get fuller quicker, you don't eat as many of them either, right? I mean, it's just, you can't beat it. This is the way snacking was meant to be done. All right, so go to masachips.com/Deace. Use the code Deace for 25% off your first order. That's MASA for Masa Chips. Masachips.com/Deace. Use the code Deace for 25% off your first order right now. All right, that's Masa Chips or VandyCrisps.com. You can do that as well, VandyCrisps.com. Those are great too. Masachips.com/Deace, code Deace for 25% off, whether you're doing masachips.com or VandyCrisps.com, 25% off with the code Deace. Nick Freitas has put out some outstanding content in the last couple months geared at trying to help men. He's been a member of the Virginia State Legislature, and he's on the ground there right now in his home state. It's a cautionary tale of what happens, how quickly and swiftly Democrats move when they gain control. It is good to finally have him here on the show with us. Nick, how are you, man?
Well, I could be doing better. It's not a great time for Virginia right now.
It is not. And so you're on the ground there. This was already a state that has kind of, I would say, toss-up leaning blue is kind of how I would describe Virginia in the last decade or so. So it's not like you guys are just like blindsided by a Democratic presence in the state. You've lived through a little bit of this devolution already, which I think even maybe makes what you're seeing now even more of a potent warning, Nick, because you guys have been softened up a little bit already, so to speak, by the opposition. And now, even after that, to see the swiftness by which they are moving here is still very striking.
Yeah, I think it's so. I spent 10 years in the Virginia General Assembly. Like I was a delegate 3 weeks ago, and I was there when I first went in. We had a 64-seat Republican majority in the House of Delegates, where we have 100 members, and now the Democrats have a 64-seat Democrat majority. So how do they manage to do this? Well, one, they would always take advantage of. We have off-year elections in Virginia. When Trump got elected the first time, they were out there in force. And they took the majority for 2 years. They took the House, the Senate. They had the governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general. So what did they do as soon as COVID happened? They changed all the voting laws. They went for things like same-day voter registration. They went for permanent mail-in ballots. They went for anything you could imagine to make it easy to cheat, right? They did it all. And then the very next year, they had some more gains, but there was a backlash. Because, as you said, Virginia was not like a solid blue state. It was a swing state, and a combination of, Joe Biden being in office and just generally screwing things up on the regular. Glenn Youngkin running, Winsome Sears, Jason Miras. We managed to take back the House for 2 years. The Democrats still have the Senate by one vote. We took back the House, had the governor, attorney general, and lieutenant governor. And Steve, guess how much of the Democrat agenda, which they did in 2 years, we were able to get rid of?
I'm going to guess it's a low number. Yeah.
0.
Yeah.
0. We got rid of nothing that required legislation. Why? Because with just a one vote majority in the Senate, they were able to block everything. So Governor Youngkin did his best with respect to what he could do on the executive branch. Jason Miras did his best with respect to what you could do with the Attorney General's office. But when it came to legislation, we were able to do effectively nothing, because when they take power, they run as far to the left as they possibly can get away with. They create as many constituencies within the bureaucracy as they think they can get away with. And then they know as long as they can hold something with one seat, all of them will get in line in order to block any sort of reform that you do. So what happens? Well, we lose because you Republicans don't do anything, right? And they get the majority again. This time they get it overwhelmingly. And I don't think people in Virginia, I promise you, don't fully understand. They don't fully grasp what's about to happen. They've started to, because they've looked at all the bills that have come out. Because the Democrats ran in Virginia on this idea of civility, normalcy, affordability. That was the big one, like affordability. We're not doing crazy stuff. We're just here to make sure that Virginians can actually, raise a family in a safe environment, afford the mortgage, buy a home, right? That's all we Democrats want. And then they got into power. And I mean, I can go over some of the most ridiculous bills that everyone's heard. I mean, there's literally a bill that would make it illegal for a state agency which distributes federal funds to charity programs. It would make it illegal for that state agency to investigate or to set up criteria whereby they could investigate charities that are getting your tax dollars and are using them fraudulently. They're not allowed to do it. Here's another one that I'm pretty sure made it on nobody's election mailer. They have a bill that will reduce all mandatory minimums to include mandatory minimum or reduce mandatory minimums for things like robbery, sexual assault, child pornography, distribution, and creation. Oh yeah, when anybody showed up to the vote for a Democrat in last November, did they think, oh yeah, I'm doing this because I know what they're going to do is try to take my guns. They're going to try to gerrymander the state to make what's currently a 6-5 congressional seats into a 10-1. And they're going to, and they're going to definitely get rid of mandatory minimums for child pornographers. Oh, and they're going to come up with 51 new different ways to tax me in the name of affordability. Right? And yet, that's what they've done. And it gets much worse because there's actually an additional strategy on what they're doing with these bills that if it isn't properly understood and called out and defeated, Democrats stand to control Virginia for the foreseeable future. I don't mean just the next couple of election cycles, because they will use this to consolidate power, and they will use it to set up Abigail Spanberger to be a presidential candidate. And it's, again, having been there in the General Assembly and knowing all the players, right? Like knowing Speaker Don Scott, knowing Senate Pro Tempore Louise Lucas, knowing Attorney General Jay Jones, knowing Governor Spanberger, it is so easy to see what's about to happen over the next 2 years and how they will use it to reward, how they will use the power of government to reward their friends and punish their enemies. And guess what, Virginians? If you didn't vote for them, you're the enemy.
So, Nick, I mean, you're right there in the shadow of our nation's capital in Virginia, right? You're a stone's throw away. We are, I mean, look at the amount of ground soil we've had to till, the amount of screaming we've had to do. And now it finally appears Republican senators, since they don't have an excuse now, there's not some obvious constituency group that we're aware they have that is going to be hurt, like some of their biggest donors would be hurt by an E-Verify, for example. There's really no reason not to do the SAVE Act. I mean, they keep telling us all they care about is winning elections. Well, this is the most important piece of legislation to pass this year to help them win an election. So they're literally without any excuse. And yet we've had to fight, scratch, and claw to get them to this point to even agree now to, it appears, a standing filibuster to put in place a policy that would make it easier for them to win. Contrast that with what you're seeing on the ground with just the immediate show of force in unison of the Democrats there in Virginia.
Oh, it's you know, I had someone tell me as the ICE raids were going on, like, well, you know, Nick, I'm not talking about retreating. We just need a strategic realignment. I'm like, oh, yes, I'm very familiar with the Republicans' strategic retreat that never quite ends. And I think part of this is because Republicans got so used to operating within an environment where we didn't have a say in the media. Right. We could not deploy resources or personnel where we needed them at the time that we needed them to make the difference. And the Democrats could. The Democrats were very good at, they've got an army of paid activists. The media is in their pocket, arts and entertainment in their pocket. And so they always had this ability to dominate the messaging in a way that we just couldn't compete with. And then social media came along, and specifically X no longer being dominated by the left. Trump gets into office, and all of a sudden all the other platforms are now, you know, not deplatforming us the moment we're not, you know, regurgitating whatever the left puts out. And these guys still don't know how to leverage it. They still think, I will give you a perfect example of this. When I was still in the Republican House of Delegates and the Democrats were basically going through with this push to completely and illegally change our constitution so they could gerrymander the entire state, right? The response was, well, we need to do a press conference. And I said, I'm like, why? Why do we need to do a press conference? Well, this is how we get our message out to the people and how they can hear what we're saying. Like, this is not how you get your message out to the people. This is how you get the liberal mainstream media's rendition of your message out to the people. And so if you want to get it out to the people, just put it out on social media. And they're looking at me like, well, no, we're going to do a press conference. So we do a press conference, and every question looks like it was written by the Democratic Party. Yep. Every single question. And then I go on Instagram and I put out what's going on, and it gets 40 times the views of anything they're going to get on this press conference. But We're constantly fighting this battle where Democrats understand that when they're in power, expand the bureaucracy, expand the spending, create more constituencies. Like when I look at these crazy bills in Virginia, let me just predict the future with amazing accuracy. You look at some of the more crazy bills here. The Democrats aren't going to allow every one of these through. No, here's what's going to happen. Speaker Don Scott is going to look at some of the most craziest bills that impact industry, like these taxes on Netflix and walking your dog and everything else, right? He's going to look at all of those, and then he's going to bring in people from the industry. He's going to bring in from the various companies that are all representing these industries, their lobbyists, and he's going to say, okay, it's real simple. This would be devastating for you guys, right? Or you can start donating correctly. Like he won't say that verbatim, right? That would be illegal. But no, the impression is going to get through that if they donate correctly, well, then some of these bills can die. Some of these other bills are not going to die, but you know what? There may be a special carve out. There may be a Panera Bread sort of carve out like they had in California for those industries that are willing to come to the table and actually talk to us and hear our concerns. And so the industries will all get the message. You don't hire Republicans. You don't hire, Glenn Youngkin appointees. You don't hire former Republican members. You don't donate to Republican candidates. You donate to our candidates, and you donate to the things that we want. And oh, by the way, maybe you put some of the people that we really like on your corporate boards so we can make sure that you're doing the right thing and keep an eye on you. And provided that you do all of those things, well, I got good news. You're now eligible for subsidies. You're now eligible for carbon. You've got a seat at the table, big guy. In fact, even if we raise this tax over here, we'll do it in such a way.
You're a member in good standing is what you're defining.
Yeah, we'll do it in such a way to where it crushes your competition. And now you got to pay a little bit more in taxes, but we just helped you consolidate the market.
Yep.
Right? This is what they'll do. And for everything that when Don's done doing that, then they'll go up to Abigail Spanberger and they'll say, Abigail, we're going to permit you to veto some bills. And that is how the conversation will go. You will be allowed to veto certain bills so that you can reinforce this idea that you're a moderate. The Democrat legislators, they carried some crazy bills, but moderate, reasonable Abigail Spanberger, she vetoed some of those bills because she's a moderate. No, she isn't. Her voting record in D.C. proves she's not. Her initial executive order in Virginia proves she's not. But it doesn't matter. The press will dutifully report it. They will flood everything. And the people out there that don't really pay attention will be like, oh, well, see, Abigail vetoed two of those bills that were because she's willing to work across the aisle. No, she got permission from Don Scott and Louise Lucas, whose support she needs when she runs for president, to veto certain bills as long as she didn't touch the ones Democrats really cared about. And that's how this process works. And the industry will get the message. They will consolidate power with respect to the donors. People will learn that you don't give to Republicans or you get in trouble. People will learn that if you work for Republicans, you get in trouble. And then don't even get me started on Jay Jones. I'm sorry. Do we really think the guy that was fantasizing about Republican kids dying in their mother's arms is going to have any qualms about launching investigations into any number of the regulatory bills that they're actually looking to pass? Mm-hmm. And do we have any question that they will be targeted investigations that will never touch any of their political allies? Of course they will. And everyone will get the message. Play ball. Now, what would Republicans do if we were in charge? Well, we don't see the government as a weapon to use against fellow citizens that we disagree with. But if we don't start using legitimate government power to actually carry out legitimate government functions, then what's going to happen is we're going to look at Republican leadership and say, what are you good for? It's like, Republicans, hear me. If you actually want people to believe, if you want people to actually believe in the Constitution, if you want them to believe in our processes, if you absolutely believe those things are essential and wonderful and good, great. Use them in legitimate ways to achieve the end states that you were elected to achieve. Because if you don't, everyone's going to get the impression that this is meaningless. This is meaningless. The left always gets what they want, and we never get what we want. This doesn't work. And
Amen.
So I don't know how else to say it to get them to understand. I didn't have the best luck with my own caucus. Certain members absolutely got it. Were wonderful to work with. Other people, it's just, I don't even know what to say. They don't know what time it is. They don't know what time it is. They think they're dealing with Democrats from 30 years ago, and they're not.
Well, they're going to bitterly learn what time it is in real time right now. Nick, thank you so much, man. That was a tour de force, brother. God bless you. Appreciate it.
Thank you as well.
You bet. Todd and Aaron, what'd you think of that?
Yeah, he needs to go barnstorming across Texas right now, per the conversation we just had. You know, the margins are much narrow, even in a place like Texas. And quite frankly, Steve, how long have we been talking about the possibility of Texas going blue? This isn't like a brand new conversation. And we just keep slouching towards Gomorrah for the very reason he says. We got other stuff to do. We're distracted. We get in there and we're part of the club. Hey, you know, this has to be more about secret handshakes and golf tee times. We have got to rival the energy of the other side. Otherwise, our children are just going to get nuked.
This has everything to do with the conversation we started with at the top of the show. On the one hand, there are political realities at play that mitigate some of the effectiveness, namely what the margins are in certain chambers of Congress. On the other hand, are we really certain, given those mitigating factors, that our leadership and really the entire caucus, you look at any deep red state, you look at any red state, you look at the federal government, which is in control, in name only, by Republicans, do you really think, even given those mitigating factors in terms of their effectiveness, that they are really going pedal to the metal on anything? No. The answer is, of course, is no. And of course, this is the chicken or egg thing, but in our system of government, the people are the ones who choose their representatives. And I want to reset this one more time. Your elected representatives, more often than not, probably 98.9% of the time, are reflections of their constituents, not aberrations. That can be a good thing with Congressman Chip Roy. That can be a good thing with people like choose a senator who's good on, has a great voting record. Can't think of one off the top of my head. Maybe there is one. But most often they are reflections of their electorate. That says, again, more about us than it is about them. Now, that doesn't mean they don't have any responsibility, but it does put the onus and responsibility back where it belongs on us.
Aaron just defined for you what it means to have a government by the consent of the governed, right there. We'll come back. Fake news or not is next. All right, back here with Hour 2, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast with Aaron McIntyre and Todd Erzin. I'm Steve Deace. They're back there in our state-of-the-art studios. I'm here in the Deace Man Cave because I've got to catch a flight like right after the show and head out for some meetings in Arizona. I'll be doing my show from there the next couple of days on location, where for Iowa in the 1st of February, it's nice. All right, about 30 degrees, not a flake of snow on the ground. No bitterly cold wind chills or wind gusts, but it's going to be a legit 50 degrees warmer out there in Phoenix. It's going to be like high of 80. And when I get out there, that's going to be some culture shock that I, for one, am looking forward to. And I'm also looking forward to hearing more from you. Let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox. steve@stevedeace.com. That's how you can email the show. That's steve@stevedeace.com, DEACE. Like us on Facebook, MeWe, and Gab. You can follow me at Steve Deace Show on X, Instagram, and TikTok. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel at Deace Show on YouTube. That's at Deace Show on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast if you're a podcast listener, and that way you know that if you hit that subscribe button, or if it's on Apple, it's follow. Every time we do a new episode, it's right there in your feed every single time. Many of you have done that. Thank you. And then a lot of you have also left us, tens of thousands of you, in fact, have left us 5-star reviews. Thank you for each and every one of those. You can leave yours for us today, and we would appreciate that too. We also appreciate our friends over at Dream who answered the question that I know I know that has flummoxed America for eons now. How is it possible to get Steve Deace to sleep all night long without having to get up to pee at least one time? The Beam Dream Powder, I know. See, you're now at peace. I'm about to answer that question for you. The Beam Dream Powder turned out to be the answer. A night of sleep so deep, I didn't even have to pee one time. They've got several flavors. I'm kind of a chocolate peanut butter fan myself, and all of these hot cocos, not loaded with sugars and carbs, that you drink right before bedtime. They're loaded with all the stuff that you need for your best night's sleep, like L-theanine, what else? Reishi, magnesium, and more, melatonin, all natural ingredients. You get 40% off the Dream Powder right now if you go to shopbeam.com/Steve. That's shopbeam, like laser beam. BEAM, shopbeam.com/Steve, and use the code Steve. You'll get up to 40% off. What does that mean? It means you get the Beam Dream Powder for just $39. So a good night's sleep for $1.25 a night. Got to think a good night's sleep is worth at least that. Shopbeam.com/Steve. That's shopbeam.com/Steve. All right, coming up at the bottom of the hour for Pop Culture Tuesday, one Grammy award speech was not like all of the others. We'll play that for you and get some reaction. But the best thing I can say about our guest here next on the program is, this is a guy that makes me smarter when I read him. We did an entire Evergreen episode on one of his pieces back in 2025, way back in the day. And he's written a couple of things recently that I've read that to me almost seem like we are now itemizing the Hegelian dialectic, which is when the thesis and antithesis merge now into a new consensus. Two sides that you thought were separate and apart instead merge into forming a new side. And so, John, it's good to have Jon Harris here on the show. And John, it is. I've just truly been blessed by a lot of your work in the last year, brother. So, you've been on this show several times, just not as a guest. All right. So it's good to have you finally with us, man. How are you,
Steve? It's an honor to be here for the first time. I'm doing very well. Hope you're doing well. I'm in the Northeast, so we just got hit with a bunch of snow. And I feel like I went for a drive today, and it was like a whole new world. So I'm feeling really good.
So, John, for folks in our audience who don't know you yet, and they're going to get to know you better here, I think, in this year and the years to come, because I know I'm sharing a lot of your stuff with people I know around the country, and it's starting to get shared now back to me. Tell them a little bit about you and kind of how you ended up in this think space.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I was a seminary student that watched social justice creep into my Southern Baptist school. And the Southern Baptists are a conservative denomination. It's the largest Protestant denomination in the country. And I was very concerned about the leftward trajectory post-Trump's first election. And I tried to go through the proper channels. I got shut down. I ended up whistleblowing, I guess, for lack of a better term, on it in 2019. I wrote some books on social justice, tracing the history of it in evangelical circles and then refuting it ideologically. And 2020 happened. And so I was one of the people out there in the Christian right circles that was explaining this phenomenon. And that just boosted my profile. I wasn't planning on that, but all of a sudden I had all these subscribers and supporters. So I decided to keep going down that path, exposing the left. And the last few weeks, I guess months now, I've also been giving a little bit of time to exposing some threats I see coming in on the right, which I think is what we're going to talk about. But I care about theology. I care about authentic, traditional, conservative thinking, and that's what my platform's about.
I introduced you with a little crash course to the audience on the Hegelian dialectic. Do you think, because that's what I thought of reading a couple of the pieces that you've written recently that we're to talk about here in a few minutes, do you think that was an appropriate description for maybe what you're hinting at here a little bit?
I think oftentimes that's framed as horseshoe theory, right? That the left and the right converge somehow.
You go far enough left, you go far enough right, they just end up in a circle and start holding hands. Yes, yeah.
I don't know if I view it that way. Like, I'm more inclined to say that there's authentically leftward ideas that are actually infiltrating the right, and that I'm not willing to cede that that's like far right. I'm more likely to say, no, I'm to the right of that, actually. That's that's still on the left. It's just because someone who has said conservative things for a long time is saying them doesn't make them conservative. I'd have to think about that a little more, whether that's part of the Hegelian dialectic, but it's certainly a threat to the coalition that we have. And as a conservative who believes that the answers for our country are going to be Jesus and understanding our own identity, who we are as a people, I don't think that subordinating primary concerns that threaten that identity is a smart thing to do. And that's what's happening right now. I see elements on the right that want to join hands with the left on specifically concern over the influence of Israel. And they now see this as a purity test. So anyone on the right who doesn't share, frankly, with some of them, their obsession, is now not part of the club. And we can include people now who might disagree with us on gender ideology and abortion.
The new litmus test for America First is, are you obsessed with a foreign country as much as I am?
Yeah, it seems like that to me. I'm watching that at least develop. We're in the developmental stages.
It's ironic. We're about 9 months from the Ted Cruz Tucker Carlson debate. See, this is why I use the Hegelian dialectic. Okay, and there's not a lot of people in America that are on a first name basis with those two individuals. Somehow, I just happen to be and used to work for one of them. And what's funny is now they're the same guy. You could accuse both of them of being overly obsessed with Israel, just coming at it from completely opposite directions. They just swung so far around there. They have both arrived at the same place. They're looking at it from a different perspective, but they just arrived at the same place of a literal obsession, of seeing things through the prism of Israel. I mean, you go back to that debate now and you start asking, what are you guys really debating? You guys both really want us to be obsessed about this to some degree, and you're just looking at it from different levels of obsession.
Yeah, two sides of the same coin in a way. I understand what you're saying with that. And it seems like early on, having a bit of a criticism or a re-examination of our relationship was fair. Like, are they controlling us too much or influencing us, I should say? Are we spending too much money? Are we not getting a return? I understood those questions to be asked in good faith and legitimate, but it's now coming to the point that I saw Tucker Carlson at AmFest, and I have a couple other examples like this of others who said the same thing, essentially. But he says we need a new coalition, and it's of decent people. And in the context, he's saying there's people on the right who aren't decent because they're too critical of Islam.
Yep.
And so you presume that these 85% of Americans he said are decent, most of them are on the left. And that's going to be our new coalition. And I'm thinking those are pro-abortion, pro-gender ideology, communists. I mean, are those decent people? I thought we just defeated those people. But what is the thing that they have in common with someone like Tucker? Well, I don't know. We just saw Shank on his show, and they're against Israel. That seems to be the new purity test. Yeah.
So that's exactly what he attacked Ted Cruz. I mean, he asked Ted Cruz, hey, you said you ran for Senate because you wanted to defend Israel. What about America? What about America? What about America? That he was accusing Ted of redefining the conservative coalition around support for Israel. We've now, again, we're back, to where we started. We're there and back again, Bilbo. Okay. Now Tucker's arguing the position of you can't be in the coalition unless you hated Israel as much as I do. What is the fundamentally different argument here? What is it?
I don't think it is different. I think it is the same thing, essentially. And it's not just him. There's others who are doing similar things. Candace Owens has had people from the left on his show. Nick Freitas has talked about a new coalition. And the conservatives are going to have to give up the free market, and the liberals are going to have to give up the border, and we can all come together and sing Kumbaya. And I'm thinking it was just a year ago that we actually elected, and then we started the presidency of Donald Trump, the second term that he has, and it was a completely different landscape at that time. And I don't know what these people expected him to do, but he's doing a lot of the things that we wanted. And even on foreign policy, he's getting us really big wins. He's even stood up to Netanyahu at times. But it doesn't seem to matter. In fact, just recently, you probably saw this, Steve, Netanyahu said he doesn't want any more foreign aid from the United States. We're good in Israel. We can take care of ourselves. And I thought, well, this is it's Merry Christmas to me, because this is what I've wanted.
You guys won. Yeah.
Yeah, I've wanted this forever. I've wanted, we can be a good ally with Israel. I think they are a good ally for a number of reasons, but I don't like footing the bill for things, whether it's Ukraine, Israel, I don't care. And so that's a win, but it's hardly even talked about in those circles. It's like nothing happened and we're still controlled by Netanyahu somehow. I think a good example of this is James Fishback, who's running in Florida for governor. Tucker Carlson endorsed him. Nick Fuentes has said he likes him. And Fishback is making most of his campaign about, I'm against Israel. And I'm thinking, that's no different than Mamdani. Mamdani's running for mayor of New York. Mamdani is in a local election where Israel shouldn't matter that much. But if Gaza and Israel become the main thing, now in Florida, we have a quote unquote based young right guy who's running, and it's a state election. What does foreign policy have to do with this, except for he wants to divest Florida of high yield Israeli bonds, which he can't even do, but he's making that the main thing. And I'm like, this is dumb. This is just dumb.
Again, these are the people criticizing our boomer parents and grandparents for taking Genesis 12, all right, and applying it eternally to every iteration of Israel, whether it's a prophetic state or a political one, whether it existed or not. And so therefore, we essentially have to have an Israeli flag outside of all of our American churches, right? They pan all this stuff. They mock it all, right? And all they've done is turn right around and done the exact same thing in the opposite direction. They also want everything defined by where you stand on Israel, as all those boomer cliches they like to pan. They want the same thing, brother. They just want it in the opposite direction.
I think
and in
that's
many
right.
respects, that is behavior like the left, right? That is. Well, you know, it's racism if you guys do it, but not if we do. It's homophobia if you guys do it, but not if we do, right? It's really not any different. Now, here's the challenge for guys like you and I, though. The challenge for guys like you and I is a biblical worldview doesn't allow us to fall into either one of those pits. Okay, that's what that whole thing about a narrow road kind of comes in, right? And you know, you and I have had a couple of conversations privately in the last year of trying to navigate this space with everything happening. And let me share with you a conversation that Todd and I had privately before we went on the air yesterday. And Todd asked me, what do we do when essentially Tucker yesterday was literally promoting right off of Iranian state TV Jewish blood libel language? He was literally, it's literally right off of Iranian state TV is what Tucker was promoting yesterday with Jewish blood libel language. On the other hand, he told us way more about Thomas Matthew Crooks than Kash Patel and Dan Bongino did while running the FBI for the last year, right? Okay. He's been way more aggressive in taking on a lot of other shibboleths of the damned, whether it's the vaccine, things of that nature. And so Todd's like, what do we do when Tucker now is just openly promoting anti-Semitic tropes, but yet on other fronts that our people rightly care a lot about, he still is a very valuable information tool and asset. And then you have somebody like Bongino, whose voice is desperately needed, and prominence of platform. I have a big platform. I don't have his prominent of platform to take on all these various entities. He does, right? We could certainly use him in a street fight against some of the elements that you and I are talking about right now. On the other hand, what noteworthy thing did he do for the last 9 months as deputy director of the FBI that absolutely reset our understanding and posture vis-a-vis the so-called deep state? And the answer is just disappointing. And so Todd's like, what do we do trying to operate in that space? And John, I gave him a very long answer. No, I didn't. I just looked at him and said, I don't know. I really don't know. I hate saying that, you know, but I truly don't know how to navigate a lot of the space that you and I are I think accurately describing to our audience currently exists. So let's start there. What do we do? Because I seriously, I don't know what to do. I don't know what you should do exactly. I can tell you what I'm doing. And what I'm doing is I want to uphold standards. So if standards are being loosened, then I am not going to go for that, because we just had all the mainstream media and all our institutions tell us they were looking out for us. They were about truth. Well, they didn't live up to any of that. So they discredited themselves. And we rightly can, I think, cast them away and say, you are hypocrites. But I don't think we should cast away all the standards that they stood for. I like that. I think that we should still stand in the place of truth tellers, of people who care about our people and not other people's as primary. And I think that moving forward, this is a very hard time to know who to build with, because we're in a changing ground. Things are changing by the day.
I'm hoping that by the end of the year, things will be a little more clear, but we're going to have to figure out through this grifter purgatory who actually has skin in the game and who is willing to take the hard shots when truth matters and they will suffer for it. And then who is actually just trying to ride a wave. And the wave right now is very anti-Israel, very anti-Jewish. It seems to be the popular thing in the water. You're going to get a lot of followers if you go down that path. I think it's a combination of two things. It's the reaction to October 7th and seeing pictures out of Gaza. And it's also the understanding after 2020 that there's a lot of elites who do bad things. And this was attributed to a lot of high numbers of Jewish people in these certain vectors. So these sectors. So you have those two things, I think, coming together.
Most neocons are Jewish, for example.
That's right. That's just
a fact.
Hollywood.
Hollywood
has a lot of Jewish people, that kind of thing.
Yep.
And so these two things came together, and a lot of people are looking at this and they're combining them. And I mean, it's not. If you think about it for 2 seconds, it doesn't make sense. That would mean the Jewish-controlled media that's against Israel is somehow the same as Israel. Like, it doesn't make any sense. But this is, I think, what's developed, and you can cash in on it very easily. And so we got to keep upholding standards, even if it costs us. And when someone's right, we can say they're right. When they're wrong, we can say they're wrong. And if they prove themselves to be reliable in the next year or two, then I think we can start talking about building together. But until then, I'm a little wary about who I'm going to endorse because I don't know where people are going and landing right now.
I thought that was an excellent answer, by the way. And you segued into exactly what I wanted to do for the second half of our conversation. So normally every week, this segment that you're on is called Fake News or Not. All right. And we take a look at tropes, ideas, stories, and is this fake news? Is it real? And why? So based on what you just said, let me throw out a couple of ideas or distinctions that may or may not be with or without a difference. And you tell me if that distinction is fake news. Okay. All right.
Sure.
So let's start here. It is possible to be critical, even extremely critical, of Israeli political policy and even believe in some form of a Palestinian autonomy without being an anti-Semite. Do you think that's fake news or not?
I think you can be that. I don't think that's fake news.
Okay. The amount of people who claim that they are navigating that space, as opposed to, trying to expand it just to cover the fact they're just explicitly anti-Semitic or anti-Zionist, way overwhelms the amount of people who are just sincere, conscientious objectors.
I think that's probably true. Yes. So
you see
I think
the problem then that we have. See, you and I are under this biblical commandment to love our neighbors, we love ourselves, right? Okay, and so we've got to, when it's at all possible, live in peace. We know all the biblical disclaimers here, right? And so we want to grant these distinctions, even if at various times I may disagree with them, you may disagree with them or not, who knows? But we do so kind of knowing. You're yanking my chain at the same time. I know that this is really a false objection, right? And how do we not become suckers in this entire thing too at the same time?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to how do you navigate that? You have to watch over time someone's platform, what they say, and they will reveal themselves, I think. So if someone says they are acting in good faith and they believe that there's a two-state solution, I don't agree with that, but I think that there's people of good faith who believe that. And but then they keep hammering Israel in ways that are not fair. Like they will take the New York Times narrative and show the kid who's got a disease and make that the representative of what's happening in Palestine, for example. And you see that kind of behavior over and over, then you have to say, well, you're not applying equal weights and measures. That's also a Christian moral position. We have to look at things objectively according to everything that's happening and not just what fits your narrow little political vision. And I think a lot of people have failed that test.
All right, here's another one. The country is in desperate need of a resurgence of what has commonly in Protestantism been called Reformed theology, and to varying degrees was the driving theology of the people who actually founded the country and of the era, because that theology uniquely can answer many of the spiritual and cultural challenges that are facing us at this moment. But the same adherents, or I should say, expositors of that theology are determining that they should be spending way too much more of their political capital on issues involving Israel and Zionism instead, and may end up spoiling their moment in American culture as a result.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think that's probably happening, to be quite honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there are people who aren't doing that, but yes, there are people who are.
If Reformed theology misses this moment, what do you think it means for the country? Because I don't really know what's left of evangelicalism from a thought and worldview standpoint that is capable of producing a robust intellectual populace to push back, of any critical mass, to push back on just how entrenched the spirit of the age has become.
Let me give you a 30,000-foot view really quick. I think there are two ways, broadly speaking, of looking at the problems in America. One says it's all external, whether it's your boomer dad who said it's the Soviets or it's the Chinese or it's Israel and the Jews. Like, if we just got rid of these influences, we would be fine. There's another way of looking at this that says there are foreign influences, but you know what? The reason that they're even involved in our country is because they enticed us, and they enticed us because we have a weakness. Reformed theology says we got a heart condition. We're sick. We bought into all these modern sinful assumptions about gender and family and nationality and all kinds of things. We're reaping the whirlwind because of it. And in the Bible, what you see is the prophets keep telling Israel in captivity when they're under oppression, you need to do two things. You need to remember who you are, and you need to look to God. Those are the two things we have to do as Americans as well. Remember who we are and look to God. Now, who are we? We're Christians. So if Christians end up taking that first explanation to the point that we don't really have any problems, it's all external, it's all the Jews doing everything to us, and we can even figure out why we can't get girlfriends or houses or anything else because of the Jews, we have left our identity. And if we don't have our identity, if we don't trust in God and his providence, I think we're cooked. So it's a very serious thing. We have to repent. We have to remember who we are as believers. And the people who came to this country were Protestant Reformed Christians, primarily, who are trusting God. And we got to be that people again.
Final one. I referenced my assistant, Todd, earlier, our resident Catholic here on the set. And he is adamant that Protestants are in need of some form of Protestant Council of Nicaea to flesh these kinds of things out. What do you think? Is that fake news or not?
I'm worried about all the fighting that would happen if we tried to do that with all the splinter groups. I'm not sure how that would work out. I would love to see
We'd have a fight over who gets to determine who gets invited to that, first of all.
Know.
But yeah.
I know. I think there's broader worldview, just schisms that, and I like, it's like icebergs going in different directions, and there's people on each one saying that they're Protestant. So, is the ELCA church going to be invited? Is like, I think we have to determine what that group looks like first. But yeah, if we can find a like-minded group, and like I said, that might be a year or two from now when we can watch people's trajectory and see where they're going to land.
Jon, you're doing some great work right now, man. I mean it. Tell our audience how they can find it.
Yeah, you can go to johnharrispodcast.com if you want to see my Substack, substack.com/@Jon Harris. So thank you, Steve. You do a tremendous job, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be on the program.
You got it, brother. And folks, I'm just telling you, Jon's one of the people I read when I want to get smarter for the show for you guys. So I'd urge you to do the same. Thank you, brother. Take care.
God bless.
You bet. All right, Todd and Aaron, we gave you guys a lot to chew on there, and I wanted to make sure you guys each had enough time to respond. So what say you?
Man, incredible. And all I can think of the whole time you guys were talking was about the final question and the need for it. And the answer also, his first reaction is like, man, that would be a disaster, which is why you actually need it. The narrow road, Steve, you actually brought that up. That is absolutely what it's supposed to be. But here's the problem. Right now, it's a tightrope. Everybody on the Protestant side's got their own tightrope. There's room for one person on a tightrope. That's not going to cut it. And this is why my point about why Hillary Clinton and others feel this opportunity to get in, and I've got my own tightrope, and I'm going to compete. And it's constant games of Spider-Man all pointing at each other. It is so necessary that some of the chaff is taken out so that your two voices become the obvious mainstream. I don't see any way around the fact of something like that happening, because it was a laugh track note, but it was pregnant with possibility when he said we have this grifter purgatory. Well,
yeah, what a description that is.
I know, but purgatory is about those. You were a sinner. That has a cost of different kinds for people before, and those thorns in the flesh are worked out. You're going to heaven. And right now, there are so many thorns in the flesh that are just choking the life. I mean, this is the parable of the sower. And that has to be addressed on the Protestant side, or quite frankly, it's game over.
Yeah, we've discussed ad nauseum for the better part of the last decade on this program the benefits in the near term to the political balkanization of our country, and how you need to move where the red is, move to a red state, fortify those red states. But the balkanization, and that's a refuge for now, kind of like the big TARP conversations we've had when it comes to the Republican Party, but that's only in the near term. If you really want to take ground again, you're going to need something, whether it's on the issue of Israel, whether it's on any of the number of issues that people are at their throats, at each other's throats on any given day on social media. There's going to have to be some unification if and only if we want to actually take ground someday, because this is a war. We've seen the enemy has no intentions whatsoever of pulling back, of saying, okay, we've got our blue states, you've got your red states, we're content here. No, eventually you're going to have to take ground back, and eventually that's going to have to, that's going to take some unity. Now, that seems impossible right now. It does. But there is great opportunity if and only if, again, there's some people who will humble themselves, some people who need to actually take some action and grow some chests and do what it takes to find unity where it can be found, because eventually this thing, if it isn't already, is going to completely fall apart.
His answer on how to navigate this space about upholding standards, I found that to be very thought-provoking.
Well, yes, he pointed it out today, and I agree wholeheartedly. Online, he says some people think we're in Brave New World, some people think we're in 1984, and he said I think we're in Brave New World, and I agree. That's the too comfortable story, and that's what he's talking about. When there's a bunch of guys out there with nice beard oil going on, and they're saying, "Well, I can't get a job or a girlfriend because of the Jews," man. Absolutely, we are living in Brave New World then.
I hope you guys were impressed. And that, again, Jon's work's been featured on our show before. It's just the first time he's been on, and it certainly won't be the last. All right, when we come back, one Grammy Award recipient, their acceptance speech was not like the others, and we'll discuss.
Show.
All right, back here on the Steve Deace Show, and we are powered by our friends over at Jace Medical. You know, there's a lot of information out there, but what do you know that you can trust? Well, for example, think about all the things they lied to us when it came to ivermectin, and that's one of the things that prompted Jace Medical to come on the air with us here at the Blaze, is they were greatly disturbed by what they saw the system do to venerable award-winning drugs like hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin during the scamdemic. Well, ivermectin, it's not experimental, it's not new, it's not fringe. It's been prescribed globally for decades for parasitic infections. It's in ongoing research studies for further applications. It won the Nobel Prize in 2015 for the amount of lives it saved. And here's the thing, you can get it in multiple forms via Jace Medical right now. You can get the medical topical compounded by itself as an add-on to your other Jace products. And you can get it in more ways as well. Simple, prescribed, ships fast with Jace Medical. Trust the facts, not the fear, right? And you can trust the doctors at Jace who believe in your medical freedom. Just enter the code DACE at checkout when you go to jace.com to get your Jace case, JASE, or any of the other preparedness materials that they've got there at their ever-increasing menu at Jace Medical. JASE.com is where you want to go. Use my last name, Dace, as your promo code for a discount at checkout when you do. Promo code DACE at checkout at jace.com. Well, the increasingly satanic Grammys took place the other night. And guys, I have to tell you, I would have no clue what went on if not for conservative X responding to it. And just as a quick aside, is that a big enough event culturally that it is worth responding to? Or is it quite possible that way more people saw what went on in the Grammys based on us responding to it than would have ever seen it on their own? Because there's a balance there. What do you guys think?
I think it's probably a big enough event because kids and music, I mean, you know how big of a part of your life at one point that was. Now we're nostalgic about it and, the oldies. But, when it defines moods. And so I'll ask my kids about it and what they're paying attention to, how big are these people on their radar. So I think there's probably even more than film on that front. I think this is, in terms of understanding, we have generational conversations all the time on this show. I think this is one of them.
In other words, you're accusing me of an old man take, and it sounds like you might be right. That's what you're basically saying.
Well,
I've got an old man
take.
Your
old man take would be mine on this as well.
Yeah, because we're both old guys now. Yeah.
Yes.
What do you think, Aaron? You're closer to not being as old as us. What do you think?
Todd is barking up the right tree because this event is unique, I believe, and this is just my working hypothesis. Unlike films, because the younger generations, there's stories out. Anecdotal, some of them. Can't get my Gen Z college students to watch movies. They don't have the attention span. I think there was a brief moment, maybe 5 to 7 years ago, where the Grammys were starting to maybe fade into the realm of the Academy Awards and the Emmys and things like that. But I think the Grammys uniquely have some staying power, especially in the younger generation, because of what? TikTok. What's one of the number one things? There are entire radio stations who don't even use necessarily, I don't know if it's Billboard anymore. I think maybe even Billboard uses TikTok data to judge what the most popular trends and sounds are. So I think uniquely this has some sticking power in pop culture that maybe some other awards shows do not have. And I think it's largely because of TikTok.
Well, what you said about the movies, Matt Damon agrees with you. I saw a clip of him recently saying when you do a movie for a streaming service, you have to repeat the plot in expositional dialogue.
Maybe that's what I was thinking.
Numerous times because everybody's on their phones half the time and not watching the movie. So you have to keep resetting with expositional dialogue the plot all the time when you do something for a streaming service. That kind of goes to what you're talking about. And I don't know if you guys saw our friend Riley Gaines posted this. Nicki Minaj voted her post, just as a follow-up to yesterday's overtime, her post about why there should be voter ID. This was 14 hours ago. I don't know what it's at now. As of 14 hours ago, 42 million people had viewed that. 42 million people had viewed that. Guys, if we had the entire American right, with President Trump's presence included, all right, so take all of our biggest platforms, Tucker, Glenn, all right, Bongino, now that he's back, all right, Shapiro, okay, and the president. If we took all of us and the president, could we get 42 million views on one single post about why we need voter ID? It'd be close. I think it would be real close.
I didn't even know
Nicki Minaj has done that by herself, and that was as of 14 hours ago. So, Todd, that reinforces the argument that you were just making just a few minutes ago.
Right.
So with that said, then this, I think, packs even more of a wallop because I didn't know what a jelly roll was until like a year ago. I didn't have a clue. I've ate some jelly rolls. I just didn't know that it was a person now. All right. But his Grammy Award acceptance speech was not like all the others. Check it out. I know they're going to do. All right, guys. Thoughts on that moment here on a Pop Culture Tuesday?
I'm not surprised at all. I don't know his whole catalog, but I listen to the station that contemporary country music is on as much as any station I listen to, and his songs are all about redemption, and he's really good. So I'm not shocked in the least that he said that. This is what he does on a regular basis. And so the question comes, anybody who likes Jelly Roll, anybody who says, yeah, that's my boy, where in your life, just ask yourself, honestly, have I given a fraction of that testimony when there was perhaps something at risk? Because he's definitely at risk for what he just did. He doesn't care. He just doesn't care. And so we all have to look in the mirror. If you're a fan of Jelly Roll, what are you prepared to do?
So maybe a different way, I saw some people, some of the soft-headed Christians who, hollow out your religion and wear it as a skin suit, positively reacting to Jelly Roll. But despite that, despite how maybe some might use that for their own selfish and vain ambitions, to me, this is just completely in Philippians 1, maybe from the other side of the looking glass, where, I'm paraphrasing Paul. Some people preach the gospel out of vain ambition. Some do it out of goodwill. The latter do it from love. The former do it from, again, selfish ambition. What do I care? The gospel is being proclaimed. Okay? No matter how you take it, the name of Jesus was proclaimed in front of a massive audience. So I hope that lands on hearing ears. I hope that maybe people would pick up a Bible and read what it really says and then get into a good church. I know there's not very many of those, but either way, he's giving them an opportunity to hear something that maybe they've insulated themselves, a watching world that has tried to insulate themselves from even hearing the name of Jesus. So I don't really see how there's any downside there. I don't see how there's any downside. And hearing what Todd said about how songs are about redemption as well, that's something that this country needs as well. That's something that sinful human beings need to hear, songs and stories of redemption. And then you add to that, what is the source of that joy? The joy that's within Jelly Roll? That's great to hear. So to me, this completely falls under Philippians 1, no matter how people take it, maybe for their own selfish ends.
Amen, man. Very well said. Let's address the comment, Jesus isn't owned by any political party. Because when I saw that, I thought I could foresee some on our side bristle at that for the right reasons. Because it has become increasingly obvious in the last several years, unfortunately, that the Democratic Party is largely just a construct for demonic ideology and doctrines of demons. And so much so that I ended up back where I rebelled from when I first started doing this for a living 20 years ago. I mean, one of the first shows I did 20 years ago that caused so much controversy when I first started on local radio, I was just so frustrated with the Bush administration, and I just come in just like a month before TARP, and that was just my last straw, and it was the debate where John McCain said we should now pay off all of the bad mortgages, the taxpayer should, that Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns and J.P. Morgan and everybody else, facilitated happening. And I remember Barack Obama then going to the right of John McCain to say, "Oh, that's asking too much of government and the taxpayer." And I thought, goodness gracious, now Barack Hussein Obama is going to run as the limited government guy. We're doomed. And so I came in after that debate, and I did a show because it was coming up on Halloween and Reformation Day. And I did a show like on my 35 theses, why I'm just out on the Republican Party, man. This is not, we were the young generation back then, Todd. That was 20 years ago. We were a rethinking paradigms era, our phase there. And now I find myself, I'm more involved in GOP politics now at this point than I have really been my entire career. I'm speaking at more official Republican functions than I have at any point in my entire career. Not necessarily because I'm still all that enamored with the current state of the GOP, but it's just very obvious to me the demonism on the other side has forced us into a cold civil war of binary choices. And so I would guess that a few of us that see it that way, you might bristle at him saying that. And if you're tempted to do that, let me explain to you why you should not. The reason why the things that we believe now and are holding on to, these timeless truths, these laws of nature and nature's God, that which God through his word and through history has revealed to be good, true, and beautiful, not until the last 50 years, by and large, except for individual battles like civil rights for blacks, for example, but by and large, minus those individual battles, those were never confined to a singular political party. They were the expected default settings of America. And political parties made their arguments on the basis of who was going to do the best job of guaranteeing those things and defending them and keeping them in place. And we need to get back to that kind of an era. Now, I happen to believe that the other side has become so ingrained in evil that we can't just do it now on sentimentality. We're going to have to defeat them in the arena. But whether you agree with me on that or not, what we would agree on, if we're believers, is the goal is to get back to that place as a people, to restore the social compact. All right, that when 80% of Americans say they believe in God or are Christians, it means something, unlike what we think nowadays that it does not. And especially for a lot of the people in that room and the influences that they're under, to have one of their own who's been as broken as they are, who's probably been involved in some of the same moral turpitudes and traps that many of them currently are, who's all tatted up and everything else, to have him looking at them to say something like that, it removes a false objection. Hey, you don't have to agree with the Steve Deaces of the world on everything. Steve's not Jesus. You won't give a testimony before Steve Deace and his audience, but before Christ. And the truth is, I was actually flirting with moving left on several issues like immigration until I got saved, studied the Bible, and then it made me more right-wing than I ever was before, okay? I was a Rudy Giuliani Republican before Jesus. I'd have voted for any yellow dog Republican, and I would have said all you Christians with your pro-life stuff are killing us and why we can't win elections. That's who I was before Jesus. So at this point, the goal should not be to reach such an audience. Don't be so much concerned about turning them into us, but turning them towards Jesus. And then let him cook, as the kids say today. Gentlemen, you have any thoughts on that before we get out of here?
Yeah, my hope would be that the median conservative right-winger would hear what Jelly Roll said in the immediate aftermath of Jesus is not owned by a political party and say, yes, full stop. Mm-hmm. I suspect that the median left-wing voter is probably going to hear that and say, yes, the Republican Party doesn't own Jesus. Ha ha, gotcha. That's what I suspect.
Yep.
Yeah,
that doesn't mean, though, that's what it means. But yes, that's what they think.
Yeah, that's not what he said.
So you gotta know who the sender of the message is, because if Jon Stewart is sending that message, you don't own patriotism.
Great point.
Yeah. Then you throw that in the garbage. But I know Jelly Roll at the very least is way closer to Michael Jordan. Well, even Republicans buy sneakers too on this. Jesus is for everyone, and he would. This is a dude, I guarantee you, he'd sit down in the gutter with just about anybody because he's been there. And furthermore, if he's really preaching the gospel, which I think he is, he knows this left. The only thing that we got a shot at coming together in the way you're talking about is with Jesus. It ain't even worth talking about unless it's with Jesus. So that's what we're going to do.
Great point there, Todd. That's the character and integrity of the messenger really frames the message in the context of what you were talking about, that Aaron. Because of who he is and what his story is, it does mean something totally different than if Jon Stewart got up there and said it. Correct. That's a great point. All right, you guys are going to hang out here. I got to go catch a flight. You guys are going to do overtime for our subscribers at blazetv.com/Deace. You'll be able to watch that later today. You can go there right now. Become a subscriber to Blaze TV, by the way, at a discount if you use my last name, Deace, as your promo code. All right, so I'm going to hop on a flight. Hopefully everything is on time, and I'll see you guys over the next 2 days in sunnier and warmer Phoenix, Arizona, as I am on location for Wednesdays and Thursdays show, and then I'll be back on Friday for the Deace group. But you guys should still get the normal amount of broadcast mediocrity mediocrity that you are accustomed to. I want to thank Jon Harris for joining us today. Definitely go check out his work, become familiar with it. And Nick Freitas as well. I know a lot of you are already familiar with him because you've been telling us to get him on for years. And so we were finally able to make it happen. All right, so safe travels to me, to the rest of you. Go hard. Romans 8:28.